Hey, Redcasters, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Go Big Red.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast, the Husker Fan Sports Show.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast. I'm your host, Honky, and I'm with Redcast Boomer.
Well, glad to be back on the show. I feel about as prepared as the Kansas City Chiefs were for the Super Bowl yesterday, so hopefully we'll get similar or if not better results.
Very nice.
Sorry,
and I'm with Redcast Abby.
Wop, 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 wop. What's up? Just had to do it. I know Bill's a big fan, so I had to do it for him.
And I'm with Redcast Rob.
Shh, nobody tell him he's muted still.
Oh, stay muted. Please stay muted, Rob.
Okay. I'm just really excited. I got so excited for our number 24 Husker baseball team to be starting their season this week with a lineup of UC Irvine, Vanderbilt, San Diego State, and then at Grand Canyon. So we got a strong start to the season here. I don't know how many games they play in a season, but undefeated is possible still.
Well, we're still undefeated, so I guess that's a good place to start from.
Absolutely.
Forgive Rob if he's a little rusty here, or if any of us are a little rusty. It's been a while since we've all been on together, but we're back. This is a full night complete of that. Abby, this is a perfect time to have you on because of all the different sports that are going on. We're going to talk about March Madness with the guys. The women tonight, unfortunately, they just got done and that wasn't a very good one against Iowa, but they're out there playing. Softball just started up. We've got baseball, like Rob said. So there's so much going on. Of course, there's always football. And because that's not enough, there's volleyball news in the offseason. A coach left. You may have heard of him, and we have a new coach. So there's been a lot going on. And we're here to kind of catch up on it and everything. But, Rob, was there something first before we even go? Was there something you wanted to show, and we can throw it up there?
Well, yeah, there's a pretty big thing coming up here for Coloradans for Nebraska. We've actually got some opportunities here for Nebraska night at the Avalanche game, March 6th versus San Jose Sharks, the team that I grew up rooting for. And it's at Bahl Arena on Thursday, March 6th. And the first 100 tickets that are purchased are going to receive a limited edition Coloradans for Nebraska puck. So it's a great way to show your Husker pride and cheer on the Avs or Sharks, as I would. And you can order your tickets there and just, reach out to anybody on the Redcast if you have questions about this and you're out in the Colorado area. We are big supporters for Coloradans in Nebraska. We actually, a couple of years back, went out to Estes Park before the Colorado game and supported them at their function that they had there where Adam Carricker and Tommy Frazier was there. And we got to have dinner with those guys. So that was kind of cool. If you remember that, Honky, I don't know how much you had to drink that night. So
I remember bits and pieces of it. It does look like there is a QR code, too, for anybody that's watching live or watching on YouTube after the fact. There's a QR code out there. So, yeah, very cool. Colorado's in front of Nebraska. But, let's catch up a little bit on Husker athletics right now. And I think probably the top of mind thing for most people is what's going on the men's basketball team. And so let's start up with that. Back on the bubble. And holy smokes, if we had this show 12 days ago, the season would have been over. We were, in the midst of a 6-game losing streak. Everything looked like it was over. And all of a sudden, 4 games later, 4 big wins. And here we are. Andy Katz has us number 30 or number 25 in his Power 37 list here. So right behind defending champs UConn. Abby, I'll start with you. How quickly can things turn? I mean, this is an amazing turnaround.
I am not. I feel like I shouldn't admit this because I'm a pretty positive. You guys know this. I'm pretty positive, pretty uplifting about our teams. But it was after probably, I don't know, Maryland, whichever that last loss was. I was talking to Dustin and I was like, Dustin, I don't know how you come out of this. I don't know how you do. I don't know how you I don't know how you get to the postseason. I don't know how you get to the Big Ten tournament. If you miss both of those things, how do you get anyone to come play at Nebraska? Do you know what I mean? Like we had so much momentum last year off the offseason and even the year before where we looked like a team that was like, okay, we're going to get there. We've built this momentum. And then it felt like during that 6-loss streak that it just stopped. And there was just nothing. And I will admit I went to bed that night just being like, I just think maybe we're never going to be good at basketball. Like it was heartbreaking for me because it was like, it's not even that we lost. It was how we lost. It was that they didn't look like they wanted to play basketball anymore.
Mhm.
And you just think like, I don't know how you break that mentally because it was all mental for those guys. I mean, it was purely mental on those players' part. And I don't know how you do that after that long, after those kinds of losses. And so I was I didn't watch the Illinois game. That was us coming home from the Purdue women's game. So I didn't watch it until the very end. And then it was like, we got home and it was like 30 seconds left and Illinois got the ball. And I was just like, oh, well, we played real hard with them. We're going into overtime, like smacking Dustin's dad. It was a whole thing. And so now it's just like, okay, so you hate that they went through that 6-loss streak, but maybe that's just what they needed to just snap back into playing the way they started the season playing. And it's going to really suck this year because I think you just look back and still of like what could have been with this. And I know season's not over, but you just think like, oh, if only they hadn't gone on that long of a losing streak, that maybe better things will happen. But it just seems like they're back. And we're going to lose some games still, but it just really feels like this team is back to being what we started seeing. And I think what was expected of them this season.
Yeah, you definitely started to see Bryce and Gary take games back over again. That's going to be the key for us no matter what. Bryce needs to be at the forefront of it. And I think in all 4 of these wins, he's had over 20 points. I mean, Boomer, can you remember a roller coaster ride of a team quite like this where the depths were as low and the highs have been as high?
Well, no, and the season's not over yet, so God only knows where it might end up. But, knowing Nebraska basketball the way we do. But, no, I mean, everyone knows, we can be a little more glum here in some cases. And I think, like you said, I think everybody was about ready to write off that season, during that 6-game stretch, especially because, the way they lost games, it was against the better teams, the Purdue's and the Wisconsins. You were just getting blown off the court. Didn't look like he even belonged, in the same sport. And then the chances you had to turn it around against like the USCs and the Rutgers and, so on, they just would fall short, whatever it was, and at home, no less, which was disappointing, that they just couldn't seem to get over that hump. And you just kind of thought that, hey, that team might be broken, mentally. And it's just, how do you recover from that? And somehow they did, they flipped a switch somewhere, against Illinois. And that's kind of paid off, in these last few games as well. I don't know what it was that just did a complete 180 as far as the team goes. And they, the 6-game loss was disappointing, but now you're in a good position to, make that run at the end of the season, which is arguably the easier part of your conference schedule. Yep. Just on paper, the teams you're playing aren't nearly as tough and, imposing. Yeah, you still got Maryland at home and, Michigan at home for ranked teams, but everybody else, in theory, are teams that you should be better than, just if you look at records and overall performance. So you should have a good chance to pick up, those few more wins to get you to 20. And, if you do that, you're comfortably in the tournament. So that's kind of what you're shooting for. So just keep playing like you are and, pick up, 4 more wins, and that's where you want to be. So
a lot of quad 1 opportunities. I remember the year that we didn't make it under Miles. And that was one of the first years of the show. And I remember Dave was talking all about what the NET rankings were, the net ones. I didn't even know what they were yet. And I'll always say we should have made it that year, but we only had 1 quad 1 win. Well, Rob, right now, I think the last I saw, we were 5-6 in quad 1. And even though to Boomer's point, the schedule isn't the strongest at the end of the year, they're almost all quad 1 teams just because of the nature of the games in the Big Ten. So, I mean, Rob, everything's still ahead of us.
Well, yeah. And Chris Pankinen, I think that's our Pankinen on Twitter, posted the other day, and I saved this. Nebraska already has more quad 1 wins, 5, and road wins, 4, than last year's team, which only had 4 quad 1 wins and 3 road wins. And that got us an 8 seed. Still work to do, but the resume is right where it needs to be. Hashtag GBR. And then he follows it up by saying, basically responding to somebody else. If they get to 20 wins, that pretty much locks down an entry into the NCAA tournament. And that is without winning a game or two in the Big Ten tournament. Mm-hmm. Now, if they get to 21, 22 wins by the end of this, let's say they come out here, let's see, they get 1, 2, we'll say 3. I don't know how many. I'm looking at the games that they have left here. Let's see if they get 1, 2. I'm counting. The 4 wins are there. I mean, they play Northwestern, Penn State, Minnesota again, and Iowa. All of those games are winnable. So, I mean, we're looking at a team that basically has turned the season around. I think that they dipped low at the right point in the season, and they started picking it back up the trend at the perfect time of the season, because this is when the committee and everything starts looking at the quality of your wins, beating 2 ranked teams back to back, and then beating Ohio State the way that they did. You're not going to see a lot of teams at this time of the year putting together those kind of streaks, beating Washington. And for the record, Washington's a much better team than their record and everything. I mean, we saw that the other night, how tough it was to beat them. They were picked to do pretty well in the league this year and just never kind of were able to put it together. And they gave Nebraska a hell of a run before we pulled away and won by 14 points. But I mean, so that's, as far as I'm concerned, this team is starting to look tournament ready, right? And the defense is really pulling it together. There are guys stepping up like a CG, and on the defensive side, he's got something like a 114 like defensive rating or something like that under all the advanced stats. So I mean, some of the guys, they may not be putting up as many points as you'd like them to, but on the defensive side of the ball, they're making up for it.
Well, I think that's the key to this 4-game run, and the key to the 6-loss run that we had on bad side was our defense. And when our defense isn't playing great, we're going to lose some games. And when our defense has been really good, man, we're hard to beat. Creighton learned that, and we've got some really good wins. It was unbelievable to me. The second we beat Illinois, it still felt like we were in the middle of a losing streak, but we just beat Illinois. And there was already people saying, hey, this Nebraska team, just with that win and what with our metrics, was already looking good. And then you go and you win on the road to Oregon. Then you go on the road and beat Washington. And now we've beaten Ohio State. And Thursday night, I mean, what a huge game this is against Maryland coming here. We have Scarlet Shoot Around podcast. They said the great news is because of the weak bubble this year, 19 wins should be enough to secure an NCAA tournament bid. Very doable with the remaining schedule. I agree there. I was seeing 19 the second that we beat Illinois, which seemed kind of weird to me at the time. But I mean, the metrics kind of are what they are. I think if there's something that we're still lacking, if I just feel with this team right now, I wish we had one more real great shooter. I mean, when a season's on, it's a difference. You saw him against Washington, comes out there, makes 4 or 5 of them. But man, when he struggles, it just puts that much more stress on. Bryce really needs to score. You can't. We've had Wooster step up and make a big 3 here or there, but man, you don't want him shooting a bunch of them. We've seen Gary step up and make a 3 here or there, but you don't want him shooting a whole bunch of them.
I feel like I could probably shoot from 3 better than Wooster can. I'm just saying something.
I'm just saying he's so bad for him too, because teams are just like, we're just not even going to defend you, and that has got to be just like, what a mind f, because it's like, oh no.
but he's hit a couple big shots. He hit a big 2 against he hit a big 3 yesterday against Ohio State. He had a big 2 against Oregon. But as the season goes on, you start to kind of learn the team a little bit more. Like Wooster's really good taking the ball to the hoop. That's his strength. And if guys play to their strengths, and if the defense is just giving you that 3, that's telling you something. Don't shoot it, and against Illinois, I mean, we were at that game and the crowd, the section I was in, I think Wooster, I don't know if he went like 1 of 7 that night or whatever, but I mean, they were giving him the 3 every single time. But when Bryce is on and if Connor is on, if those 2 guys are, I mean, those are our 2 best guys from outside. Hoiberg can shoot okay. And Hoiberg, gosh, that was the thing too. I guess I should mention what happened against Illinois. that starting lineup. They put Hoiberg into the starting lineup, and and Fred's been messing around little bits and pieces with the lineup against Illinois. Morgan was in it, and so was Wooster and Sam. And then the next game they had Wooster out and they put in Burke, and then they've had Burke start and pulled Morgan out. But some combination of Sam, Gary, and Bryce for the three guys that are constants. And I guess the one thing, and Boomer, I'll go to you on here, the very, very tail end, unfortunately, sometimes we can't have nice things. In the last minute of that Ohio State game, Burke goes down with an ankle injury. We don't know how serious it is, but that is not the thing we need right now, especially with Maryland coming to town. They're a big team.
Yeah, that is frustrating because, he is a guy that you can sometimes count on to step up and be that other scoring threat. As opposed to Williams and Gary, he's had a couple of, double-digit games scoring-wise. So, this is going to be a good chance for, someone like Morgan to step up again. I think he had almost 20 points, not quite 20 the first time they played Maryland, and he was one of the better players there. So, going to need that opportunity for, one of the other big guys to try to step up and actually be that other presence in that game. So, I haven't heard that Burke is out for this game, but it wouldn't shock me if he doesn't play. So, have they made any official announcement yet? Or
they didn't.
Yeah, they actually. I saw today.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah, today he's out for a unspecified amount of time. Is what
aren't we all really?
Said.
But yeah,
yeah, it sounds like me after snowboarding all weekend.
Yeah, pretty much.
For
but no, this will be
amount of time.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who else can step up. And like you said, Honky, the key to this team is play to your strengths. Because how many games would we be yelling at each other on text? Why are we taking threes in some of these games and we're 4 for 28 when we're scoring 40 points in the paint in some of these games and not driving into I think USC was a prime example of that game where we just were not. We were scoring a lot inside, but for some reason we insisted on trying to shoot threes which weren't going in. So that's just what this team needs to do. They just need to remember what they do well and just do that. Especially if you can score in the paint, you're going to draw fouls in most cases, although we know how Big Ten refs are. But yeah. So
I would say that has been, like you said, playing to their strength. I think that's been one of the things that puts this year's team almost above last year's team. Is last year we had Casey, who was, so much fun to watch and just changed momentum in games for us, which was great. But then you watched us play against a team like Texas A&M, which is super athletic and just really had their way with us because we didn't have the same paint pressure that we do this year. And so you almost think that if they can remember that, like you said, Gary doesn't have to take a three. You don't have to take the three. Do a fake or a ball fake and then drive because that's where you're stronger. Morgan is stronger than Raleigh, stronger. They're all strong under the stronger kind of in the paint than they are outside. It makes you think that maybe they can pair up a little bit better with some of these other teams. Should we make it into the tournament? Give us a better shot than we had last year.
As long as we don't let them open 8 for 8 from 3 or something like that.
Well,
that's less than ideal.
Yeah.
Well, you want them to make them all up front, so at the end of the game, we're getting those defensive rebounds. That's another thing too. The way that we're out rebounding teams right now is just absolutely incredible.
Still a little sloppy.
What's that?
If I have a complaint, they're still pretty sloppy with the ball.
Yeah, what was it yesterday? In the first half or something like that, they had 5 turnovers, but 9 points off those turnovers that they allowed. Second half, they were much better. I don't think they had a turnover till really late into the game, somewhere around with 5 minutes left was the first turnover of the second half. So that is good. But they ended up with 9 total, but they have been kind of consistently that team. I remember after the Purdue game, somebody asked, they were like, oh, Fred, you guys looked really bad, with your turnovers, worse than usual. And Fred's like, no, we didn't. He's like, nah, we've looked this way all game. And he's very honest about it. It's like, that is definitely ball security it's kind of like, come on, guys, just focus. I don't know. But I think that's probably to me, that is our Achilles heel is that mental focus of just don't turn the ball over so much. But
because when we've been really good at that, I think against Illinois, we had 10 or less, something like that. I mean, when we've been really good, we win and we've beaten some really good teams. And then we've been sloppy in other games and not. That game against Illinois, I'm really going to call that the change game. I mean, if we lose that in overtime, I don't know where this season goes, but we Just like Iowa was a change game for the negative, that was the start of it. That Illinois one got turned around, and not only did they change the starting lineup, but like Braxton Maya didn't play at all. And I remember watching him on the sideline. It was like, wow, he's not getting out at all. But I think it's made. I think that has actually it's solidified or whatever. We saw little pieces of him the next game, little bits of him against Oregon, and it was just for a few minutes. But man, he was already playing so much harder, I thought. And then what we've seen against Washington and Ohio State, he made some free throws yesterday, and he's a guy that we're going to need him to step up, especially if Burke's out here for any length of time. And Mia is a guy too that he's got some athleticism at that big body. So to your point there too, Abby, is that when we got to A&M last year in the tournament, we struggled by not having real athletic bigs. That's a difference that if we get to that point, this team just has a lot more pieces and parts that last year's team maybe lacked, but they've got to be firing on all cylinders. If they do, we could be dangerous. If they don't, we've seen some real bad blowouts too. And that's the one thing, and we can move on after this, but like with the .NET matrix and all that stuff, people have referenced, well, but we've been blown out so many times. Everyone's been blown out a bunch of times right now. That is one thing that I guess Nebraska at least doesn't have to worry about, that we're not alone in the blowout factor. There's a lot of teams that have gotten, beat pretty bad so far this season. So for us, the good thing we have is we have some good wins, and let's hope they keep them going. But anyways, that's basketball. Let's, Abby, I don't know how long we're going to have you. So while we have you here, let's move on. We're going to switch this up a little bit. We're going to go to softball, and we have a new segment here called Having a Ball, BAHL ball. Ha, ha, ha. And as you can see here, this is I'm going to highlight this game, the first one of the weekend. It started the season off well, a 7-1 victory, number 19 Nebraska over number 6 Tennessee, and then 2 nice wins the next day.
And then we're not going to talk about the next 2 games.
And even that fourth game against Texas Tech, we had
it was a good game.
We had it all the way to the 5th or 6th inning, and then they hit a 3-runner on us or 4-runner, and that was
their $1 million player finally acted like she earned $1 million. I'm sorry, I'm a little bitter.
And then finished the season or finished the weekend losing 3-0 to Mississippi State, who's number 24. So it was a strong.
That Mississippi State team beat Texas Tech, A&M hoop Tech. Yeah. So they're a good team. I think they're a little underranked for where they are, but
And that was a great weekend, a great opening weekend of games down in Clearwater, Florida. So Nebraska showed up well, but Abby, kind of, you did a great softball 101 last week with Nate Rohr. Give us kind of an update on that first weekend, the first 5 games, and what we're looking at next week.
I think honestly that this is the team that we are. I mean, I think we are. Look, I'm not going to say that we're a lock for anything. I think Nate and I kind of talked about it, and much like women's basketball, less like volleyball, but much more like women's basketball, the adding of those Pac-12 teams. In softball, there's only 3 additions, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon. USC doesn't have a softball team because they don't have a softball field. But the addition of those is going to make the Big Ten softball much tougher. And that's a good thing because it obviously elevates the conference as a whole. But it is going to make the conference a lot harder. I think we were picked like 2nd in the Big Ten. I think 2nd to 4th, UCLA is an amazing softball team. They always have been. They're going to be tough to beat this year, but I think this is a really good softball team. This is going to be similar to that team that won the Big Ten a couple years ago. As long as, and we're going to fingers crossed, knock on wood, all things, as we don't get the plagued by injuries again, like we were last year. We'll see. I mean, the batting, the hitting to me is, I don't think we've seen really what they're capable of yet. I think we'll see more of that as the season goes on. And there were some errors in the infield, but I think some of that is, first weekend. They do a lot of switching and rotations of players in the infield, so it's not going to be as consistent, and sometimes that can cause them problems. But we lost to really good teams, and it's hard to be mad. It's hard to be mad at that, and we held Texas Tech for most of the game, and so it's
Mhm.
It's frustrating, but I think this is a team that is going to be really fun to watch. I think the ceiling is very high for this team, and I don't think the floor is extremely low. I think this is a very, very talented team, and if they are, there's a lot of juniors, a lot of sophomores and juniors coming back potentially next year. I know that's thinking way too far in the future, but there's a lot of good depth on this team in terms of talent, infield, and hitting.
Well, and no different than baseball. Northern teams tend to be we're slower out of the gate. It's hard playing up here. And to your point there about the errors, I think we had 4 errors against Texas Tech, including really at the game winner for them. And I mean, it's that close. And to your point, if we were playing that game a month from now, you know, maybe things are cleaned up and you're not, you know, of course, Texas Tech fans are going to say they're playing better too. But, you know, when we have Bahl pitching, like how compared to baseball, how often can a pitcher go in softball? You know, like in a weekend, how many times did Bahl pitch?
Twice. She did 2, I think 2 complete games, which
2
is
complete games out of the 5 that we play.
Yeah, it's like mechanics in your shoulder. I asked Nate about that too. It's something about the mechanics in your shoulder. It's not so rough. So yeah, she did 2 complete games. I would say, and I'm not, this is going to maybe come off as critical, and I don't mean it to be. I think you saw at the end of that Mississippi State game that Jordy's body may just not quite be ready for 2 games in one weekend yet. I think we'll see that improve. She will continue to get better, but coming off that injury, I think that just I don't want to say it's the stamina, but I just think like the conditioning isn't quite like her. She wants to do it. She's able to do it, but her body may not quite be there yet. I think she'll get there. So I think
it was Texas Tech, wasn't it? That she.
Oh yeah, it was Tech. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just looking because
correct.
They scored all their runs in the last 2 innings, and so what you're saying is correct. It was just I was confused because I was looking at the stats this week, and it looked like I haven't caught any of their games on TV yet, but you know they do play Northern Colorado coming up this week.
Yep. So but yeah, so Jordy is obviously our number 1 pitcher. It's going to take some time for our other pitchers to really get into it. Even our number 2 starting pitcher is she's a little inconsistent to start, but kind of gets into it. Typically, our backups are doing really well. Our closers are doing really well, but expect to see a lot of Jordy Bahl pitching because she is that good. I mean, like Rob said, I mean, pitching 4 shutout innings against a ranked team is insane. It's insane for anybody, and we are very lucky that she
there's going to be game conditioning. And they got 4 games coming up that are all very winnable. It's in Las Cruces. Is that how you say in New Mexico?
New Mexico State.
Yeah. So they play New Mexico State, Montana, Northern Colorado, and then Montana again. You know, they're in 4 games in 3 days that they're playing. So we'll probably see Bahl pitch like 2 of those 4, you think, Abby?
Probably.
Yeah. So, you know, and I saw that she was playing some first base in the games where she wasn't pitching too. So that was.
I actually don't know. It'll be interesting to see if she pitches those. She pitched. I mean, obviously the game she pitched, I think it was Tennessee and then Texas Tech. Yeah. Were the games that were like, those are big games, right? Those are good. And this isn't to say any of those other ones aren't, but you'd kind of look at some of those might be considered like the week games, right? The midweek games, like baseball. So you might put in some other pitchers. We've got a pretty stacked bullpen right now. So we might not see Jordy 2 out of the 4. We might see her 1 out of the 4. We'll see, but she'll play in every game. She's going to hit constantly. She's cross training at first base. We'll see her everywhere, but whether she pitches all 4, it'll kind of depend on what Rhonda wants to do to get that bullpen ready to go.
Yeah, I think the big game coming up too, and I think you talked about it with on your show. They're playing UCLA in a non-conference game in a tournament this year. Yep. So, you know, they're playing a conference opponent in a non-conference game, which you know, setting this up, it actually is a really good spread of teams. It's in Cathedral City, California. It's like the Mary Nutter College Classic. Yeah. They play Baylor, UCLA, Duke, and San Jose State. And
it's a
then
pretty prestigious
Howard
tournament.
as well in that too. And then after that, they play Utah. I mean, they're playing like 6 games in like 3 days or something like that, or 4 days. So that's that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They came out hard. They came out fast from the gate. Not a lot of time to adjust. So
No.
losing 2 games on this weekend with the kind of schedule they had it's not the end of the world. We're not firing Ronda Ravel yet, guys. Just chill out.
I mean, and we're ranked, and I don't see any of these other teams that are coming up a ranked team, right? So, and I don't think
Not
we're
till
going
we
to
get
get
to the
dropped too.
Mariner. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think we're going
Boomer.
to get dropped too much.
There was a comment that Tony had about. Yeah, I'm not mad that we lost. I'm annoyed how we lost, and I think that's a good way of saying it.
Yeah.
It's also fair, and I think you had a good tweet about this, Abby, over the weekend, where it's like, again, fans, we don't have to jump to that, fire everybody kind of thing after 1 or 2 losses, and especially in baseball and softball with northern schools, the slow starts. And I'm not even calling this a slow start. Again, we walked away with a 7-1 victory over number 6 Tennessee. That's why I wanted to lead with that. Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those things, this team, to your point, Abby, there's going to be a lot of talent. Let's see how they gel. Let's see how they get going here after about the first month of play. And I'm guessing that by the time we get to the conference play, we're going to be a pretty salty team. So,
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on from softball and Coach DBK. We have a new volleyball coach, Abby, since the last time we've talked. Now, of course, as excited as we are about having Danny Busboom-Kelly here coaching, that also means that we no longer have John Cook coaching here. And so for every bit that makes us happy, something has to make us sad there. But I guess I want to get your thoughts before we kind of get into this, but just your thoughts on the ending of Cook being here, but also how they handled that, how quickly they brought in DBK. What were your thoughts there?
I think it was a shock. I think it was a shock to everybody. And I don't know that anybody saw, media, fans, the team, obviously. I don't think anybody saw this coming. And so when that got posted, I don't remember if it was in our chat first or a different chat that I'm in, that it came up and it was just like, I'm sorry, what? Like this random huge atom bomb being dropped on like a Wednesday afternoon. What made me feel good about it, I was very sad, obviously. I love John Cook as a coach. I think his philosophy is great. He obviously has done great things for the program and the sport as a whole. But what made me not panic is you knew you knew that he wouldn't drop that kind of news when he did without a plan in place. And you knew he wasn't just going to leave this program to anybody. So I knew I was like, let's give it like 20 minutes. Like, let's give it 20 minutes and see what comes out. But I'm guessing we're going to name a coach in 20 minutes. Now, who that was going to be, I think Danny was always the front runner. It was written into her contract at Louisville that she could leave with no punishment only to go back to her undergrad alma mater. They didn't even name it. They just said that. I remember at the Final Four, between games, there were a bunch of Louisville fans, and we were just, chatting it up with them. And I was like, love your team, love Danny. And they're like, she's going to go to Nebraska someday, right? And I was like, yeah, someday, but not, not for another at least 2 years. I
Not
thought John
this
would stay
offseason.
Well, I thought she'd stay. I thought John would stay through Harper's senior year. Right? That's legitimately what I thought. And it was even funny, like 2 days before that, I was talking to Dustin about like, wouldn't it be so funny if something happened and John had to leave, and Danny came and became our coach just when you people may know that Dustin is a Purdue fan, and one of Purdue's really good volleyball players, Chloe Chacoin, transferred to Louisville this offseason. And I was just joking, like, wouldn't it be so funny if the team she transferred to, their coach left and then she didn't have anybody, which was just us being a little schadenfreude about it. And I was like, it won't happen. Harper and Chloe are the same age. Like, he won't leave before Harper leaves. In my head, that was where it was. So it's just kind of like, did I bring this into existence by making that joke? But I just think like it was handled so well. And I just think like it was handled so well by everybody. So then even Louisville having their person in place meant this was not a shock to them either. I think that that's a really good sign of like communication and nobody mean, they seemed surprised, but nobody felt it. It didn't seem, even from the Louisville fans and players that I've kind of followed, it didn't seem malicious or like bad. It was just like, oh, our coach is gone. Oh, hey, we have a new coach now. So it seems like that transition from both schools has been really,
It was
really
like
well done.
5 minutes apart or something.
Yeah, I think it's
It
just
felt
a
like.
real masterclass in how programs can handle transitions like that,
Mhm.
without maybe putting people off or turning players off or that kind of thing.
Yeah, that was a real good comment there, Boomer. I think it was Mettinger there. John Cook's departure was pure class, and with DBK as is the perfect successor, seems to be a seamless, respectful transition that honors the program's legacy and bright future. It also it's so reminiscent of Pettit to Cook, 25 years ago, and that I think I heard maybe I heard on the radio Pettit reference that there was a concern when we beat Wisconsin back in '99 in the Final Eight or in the Elite Eight, and it was like a 5-set game and everything. I mean, we just skimmed by them, and that was with Cook coaching Wisconsin, and it was like the idea that Pettit always had was to get Cook coming back to Nebraska.
Mhm.
But if he keeps winning there, if he gets into Final Fours, he wins championships. Now it's hard to pull him away. And Pettit knew they had a really good team, and that would have been coming back. Where this is a good time, this is a good way to leave the program and bring somebody in. And I think that Cook right now is looking at DBK and going, gee, she's been to 3 Final Fours and she's been to a championship game. Now, it gets harder and harder with every year for her to leave Louisville.
Yeah.
And if I left right now and he got emotional talking about the girls on the team right now, how they huddled and they said, okay, we're going to get behind her. But like, I don't want to throw anything on a first-year coach that she has to go out and make it to the Final Four or win a national championship or anything. But she's got one heck of a team that is being left for her to work with. So, I mean, that's a good spot to be in.
It's a great spot. It helps also, I think. This is going to sound, I think this might sound worse than I mean it to. I think it also helped that a lot of Danny's team from last year were seniors, right? So she was kind of going to start over at Louisville. So it almost was a really good time for her too, because it's like, well, because if she starts over and starts building that team and then leaves them when they're still in a rebuild, I think that makes it tougher. So now it's like she's leaving this new coach with players that he helped recruit. So this is now his team. This is not like a bunch of, and so I think that made leaving Louisville a little easier. And I think coming to Nebraska with that talent, who says no to that? Like, that was the other thing that made me confident of like, we're going to get somebody good because you're going to get the best coach. I think, like, I hate to say it, you could convince Jared Elliott to come here. You could convince Kelly Sheffield to come here. You could convince any coach because they understand what Nebraska is about for volleyball, the resources we're willing to put in it, the support, the players, all of that. You're going to get the best coach out there. I think Danny's that. This is so good.
And that's something that made Coach Cook so unique too. If you make a comparison to him, say Osborne on the football side, the one thing Osborne lacked by the time he was done is he didn't have a real strong coaching tree because so many people stuck with him for 15, 20 years. They didn't move on. Yeah. Cook has had people go and leave and blossom elsewhere. He had the pick of the litter from his own coaching tree. And to your point about the facilities and everything that we have here, I mean, we've got the palace of college volleyball in Devaney Center, and what could have been the big talk of the offseason, but got completely, was this blew it out of the water. But anyways, was that Devaney Center is now going to increase to 10,000 seats. I mean, that's, she's walking into a gold mine of a program that's being left for her, and her being from here, being from Adams and everything, she understands it.
Yeah, she does. She does. It's amazing now. So our top three, our kind of big 3 women's sports are now being coached by alumni and former players of Nebraska. So it's a pretty cool thing. And it's been a thing where I've clearly loved John Cook. I would never not want John Cook to be our coach. But again, if we're going to talk about the impact of women's sports, how cool is it now that all 3 of our big 3 women's coaches, the coaching teams, are coached by women? Like, we get to do that again, and I think that's a really cool thing for us to have again.
Is it weird that my favorite part of all of him leaving was just when he started talking about one of the main reasons he was leaving was because his daughter was pregnant again and he didn't want to miss his grandkids growing up. I was like, that hit me harder than anything. Like him leaving all that, I'm like, okay, it makes sense. Like he's got to have somebody in place. Like in my head, I remember because when it was announced, I was at the gym, like sitting there. So I'm like in my own head already. And then and then I heard the press conference and I was like, that's just, I don't know. To me, that's just amazing because that says so much about him and his coaching style and his relationships with the women, young women that he's coaching, and if that's the way that he made that decision and his family was like a huge part of that decision. I don't know. It just says so much about him and the class act that he is. And it's just amazing to me. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe because I'm old enough to be a grandpa at some point too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Abby, sorry.
It was so well handled, and we're obviously going to miss him, but I feel good about this. This is probably one of the best coaching transitions that I've ever felt. This is the best I've felt about any coaching transition that I think I've been through. And I was all high on Scott Frost, and this one even, I mean, felt better, feels better than that one did, because it feels stable, and that's nice. We haven't had a lot of coaches retire, so
yeah, coaches don't always
for them to choose to leave and not be chosen to leave.
Yeah, they don't always get to pick their time to come and go.
Retire, but my cousin.
Well, speaking of transitions, I'm going to spring game here, but Abby, stick around as long as you can. I know you're getting towards the end of the hour here, but one of the things in volleyball that was also announced kind of around all this time is that they'll be playing their spring game in Ord, which is super cool. My family, my mom's side is from Valley County. I'm very familiar with being in the Ord area from growing up. And so it's such a cool tradition that volleyball does, going around the state and playing in spring. And that kind of transitions us here to spring game with football. And Boomer, you haven't talked in a while. I'll get you into the mix here. It was also announced basically that the spring game is going away, the traditional spring game as we know it. Now, I'm not sure if we 100% know what's replacing it yet, if there's going to be some kind of skills competition, something Pro Bowl-esque, if you've been watching that. But at least the game itself is going away. And I guess as we get started on this, I wanted to get your thoughts on that. What's your feelings towards that traditional spring game becoming a thing of the past?
I guess to me, I was never the biggest spring game fan. I didn't go to them too often. I know a lot of people did enjoy it, especially back in the day when it was, difficult to, it's always hard to get tickets to games, but particularly in the old days when games weren't televised nearly as much, and it was an opportunity for lots of people to, take their kids or something to see a game that was reasonably affordable or free even for a time, so it was that chance going away. It is that opportunity kind of going away. Although I can see nowadays with the nature of college football being what it is, once you have limited roster sizes, the potential for injuries. We lost several players last year in the spring game for most of the season. You've got that. Your rosters are smaller. You have the argument that Rhule said about how it's, showing, players to other teams that can then tamper with them and try to get them to switch, buy into that what you will. But I suppose it's not really a surprise anymore. We've seen a lot of teams decide to, stop doing the traditional spring game, and Minnesota hasn't done one publicly for several years. I know Frost at UCF said they weren't going to do those. It sounds like going forward. And I think you're just going to see it kind of disappear from that. I think the reward isn't as great as the potential risks anymore, with the season, what it is. It probably it was inevitable, I think, with the changing nature of college football that you were going to see the traditional spring game go away.
Mm-hmm. Are you going away, Abby, or are you sticking?
Much like the spring game, I'm hopping off.
All right.
Good chat, guys. Thank you so much for.
All right, we'll see you, Abby. Thanks for joining.
Bye, guys.
All right.
I'm just trying to figure out what I'm gonna do now, Honky. Like that's one of my annual treks out to Nebraska. It's always like my first trip to Nebraska of the year every year now, coming out and staying with you guys. I'm sure that we'll figure something out for that weekend, right?
Well, I'm guessing, they still want to do I would think you'd still want to do something. It's a big weekend for the city of Lincoln. It's an extra, football weekend, essentially, from a hotel standpoint and everything. You're bringing, 40, 50, 60,000 people in, and so they'll want to do something, I would think. Plus, it's a great promotion for the other sports, softball and baseball, like we were just talking about. So, I mean, it's still something you can turn into an athletics weekend. Bring alumni back. There could be some celebrations, different things that are easier to do in the off season than during a regular football weekend. And like I said, I mean, think of the Pro Bowl. I remember growing up, and the Pro Bowl used to be a real thing. It was a real game you'd watch. And now, then eventually it became touch football, and, we'd all joke about it. And now it literally is just it's a skills competition. And even that, we've seen thousands of people show up on a Friday night to watch high school kids come here for Friday Night Lights, and, in the middle of summer, and just throw a ball around in shorts and short sleeve shirts. So I know people would do the same for any kind of thing in the spring. And I think Mac last week, he brought up a really good point when he and I did the Matt's Rule. And he's like, that with the changing teams, the amount of players now at the portal that are coming and going, you don't have as good of a feel for your team anymore. You don't know them coming into the season. And I think it's important to give fans an opportunity to get to know the team a little earlier than just August, and whatever that looks like, even if it's just going out and watching them in shorts and short sleeves, catching some balls from Raiola and the new quarterbacks that are on the team too, the Latif and the transfer from Purdue. I mean, that's a big deal. And so fans still want to have that access to see it. It's just not going to look the same in terms of the game itself. But also, and I'll hand it to you here, Rob, I've also thought for years, once we got into all the green jerseys, and the game was becoming less and less football in a lot of ways too. And I totally get it. I totally understand why it was, changing football from 20 and 30 years ago, but I'm not as beat up by the game itself going away.
No. And for me, it's about that weekend. I mean, you and I, we would go to the game. We would catch a baseball game. Last year, we caught more shenanigans really than anything after the game. Boomer even made it out into public. He saw some daylight, and he didn't burn or turn into dust or anything like that. So we had a great time doing that. And it's just kind of, for me, it become just an annual tradition that I always look forward to. Right. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't mind if it goes away, like you said, as long as it's replaced with something. Obviously, the roster management this year is a huge deal. I still don't understand all the people freaking out about it, because right now we're going to get the cream of the crop on that roster, right? I mean, and like you said, those final 10 people, 10, 15 people on the roster are going to kind of be there for, third stringers, fourth stringers, or whatever. But I don't know. It's still fun to come out and actually see. It's still fun to come out there and just see everybody and watch, football being played, regardless of what form it's in. I don't know. I guess I haven't really had a lot of time to think about it too much, because we don't know what it's going to be. Maybe I'll have a better opinion about it once that happens. But like I said, for me, it's more about the weekend. And you know what, Marty? You're right. I always have a reason to come out to Nebraska in the spring, and that's mostly to see you. So we went to a baseball game together last year. That was fun.
You could always go back to what they used to do back in the 50s and 60s and have an alumni team play your varsity team in the spring game. And you're in a bad state when the alumni team actually would win that game, but that's beside the point, which happened once. So.
Oh man, yeah, the podcasters versus the versus the first stringers or something. We could get out there.
Yeah, that would go well. Yeah.
Well, Boomer, to Rob's point there, that we don't have to be concerned about losing players. This was something that On 3 last week posted that an anonymous NIL collective and personnel staffers say Auburn, Nebraska, Ohio State, Oregon, Tennessee, Texas, and Texas A&M spent the most on their 2025 recruiting classes. As we've talked about before, it's kind of unknown because it's NIL and it's just all out there and it's hearsay and everything. But I guess if it's hearsay, you still would rather be on that list than not on it. And to Rob's point there, I mean, I'm not terribly concerned that someone's just going to swoop in and buy us out kind of, with our players. And Rhule's done a good job over his 3 seasons here of maintaining a roster as well as he can. This is a crazy offseason with the 105 and everything, but NU seems to be in pretty good position roster-wise going into this offseason.
Yeah, I would say so. At least, we've talked many times about how NIL is just opaque and just completely, rumor and hearsay for most people, and we have no idea exactly what's being spent and for what. So, I guess I'd like to know, are we spending a lot on a bunch of players? Are we just spending a whole bunch on a handful of players? I don't know. It's one of those things that'd be nice to have some clarity on. But like you said, it's better to be on the side that's known you'll at least spend some money. So you might have a better opportunity to at least get that attention from players to start with, rather than, be completely shrugged off and be an afterthought for most of them. So, and the dog agrees upstairs. Yeah. So that's Trixie. So she's got something to add. But if you're going to be, if you're going to have the money, which 1890 allegedly does, and as all the Husker fans know, we're constantly asked to donate to those things. You've got to show you're willing to spend it on something. So at least they have that reputation out there, which can't hurt. So,
well, and then this off season, and starting with the next fiscal year in July, all signs are pointing towards the NCAA settlement coming in, and that schools are going to start paying out 20, or have the ability to pay out 20.5. They're not required to, but they have the ability to pay out 20.5 million to their athletes. And but it's not every athlete makes this certain amount. It's very much a kind of a targeted thing. And I've read things where there might only be 80 or 100 athletes out of the entire athletic department that are receiving money from that. I mean, it's going towards your, elite players there, and how it gets divided up. Each school will look at it a little bit differently. Football, of course, is going to get a good chunk of that. And men's basketball is, but depending on the school that you're at, Nebraska, a sport like volleyball is going to get its attention. Also, I would imagine a player like Jordy Bahl would get her attention from it too. So, but it will be interesting to see how that gets managed as well. There's so much changing in college athletics, and we say it every offseason, like, this was the craziest offseason we've ever seen, and then, well, buckle up, it's the next one, and then it's the next one, and hopefully at some point it settles down.
Well, even like you said with the revenue sharing, I mean, they thought they kind of had it left up to the schools, and then not long ago the Department of Education sent out their little advisory that they might think Title IX applies to that, so it's got to be shared more equally, among sports. But that's still up in the air. I mean, all this is still in flux, and nobody knows exactly how this is going to pan out, until it does. So who knows where it's going to go? It's complete chaos, and right now there's just really no leadership or even a way to get it with the way the current situation is structured. I mean, there just isn't a great way to find it. So it's just kind of shaking itself out right now.
Well, speaking of leadership, we do have leadership now on the special teams, and it was just announced here officially tonight. Mike Eckler, former Husker linebackers coach under Bo Pelini, he tweeted out a couple hours ago, "I'm excited about the opportunity, challenge to go home." He's from Blair originally. Work with Coach Rhule, help Husker football win, and share the experience with my parents and extended family. Time to go get a bunch of these RLD, real live dudes. And he has photos of Will Compton and Levante David, two players that he coached back in his day here. Rob, start with you, and then we'll move it over to our special teams coordinator, Boomer. But Eckler, he comes from Tennessee. He was there for 4 years as a special teams coach. They had some very good special teams there. They're highly rated. What are your thoughts on bringing him in here? And that finishes up the trifecta of changing coordinators here over the offseason.
I think Boomer's dog could do a better job at coaching special teams than anything we've had up to this point. So, I mean, this guy, he's endorsed by, Will Compton. I don't know, obviously the guy has been a special teams coach for a long time. A lot of people really were calling for him prior to them announcing that he was going to be coming back. So, I think it's exciting. Anything, like I said, anything could be better than what we've seen on special teams. We started out the season pretty well on special teams, and I was like, wow, we're not seeing really any mistakes. And then as the season went on, more and more and more. And so that's, if we're going to tighten up one area of the game and pull out, 2-3 more wins than we did this year, that's the only way we're going to do it.
Yeah,
I really got nothing else to say on that subject,
Yeah. Coach Rhule referenced that The snapping was an issue this year, and it was, but Boomer, it was more than just snapping too. We haven't had punt returns and kick returns,
The snapper
anything consistent for years.
Returns or kickoff returns or anything like that. Or if they do, then that's an avenue of the game I had no idea existed. So
yeah,
it was more than just a long snapper on that. And Eckler, he had a stint here as a linebacker coach, but looking at what he did at special teams at Tennessee and just how successful they were in a lot of those categories that we've been just sorely lacking at for year in and year out. Even if it wasn't per se a mistake, something like fielding a punt on your one or something like that, or it's just the inability to have any return whatsoever. It may not be a mistake per se, but you're just not getting anything positive out of it. And that's something Tennessee seemed to be able to do pretty much in every aspect of the game. And then if you see like the commentary that Tennessee fans had about Eckler leaving, it wasn't one of those, we're better off without him leaving. No, they were legitimately sad to see him go.
Yeah.
Which kind of tells you what they thought of him as a coach and what he contributed there. So I think, he should have an immediate impact this season. So I fully expect special teams to be quite a bit better and noticeably so this season. Again, it's not hard to be noticeably better than what we've had in the last few years.
Sure.
You get a 5-yard punt return, and that's better than what we've averaged for the most part. But yeah. So, but no, that seems like a solid hire. No one wants to use the term home run hire around here. We've learned that the hard. If you're going to hire somebody, that's, you swing for what you can. And that seemed like the right fit. So,
yeah, well, and there's one thing that anyone that knows Mike Eckler, he is going to bring energy to that position. And that is something, Boomer, you've talked so long about special teams. It's not sexy or anything like that, but it's so important that you put equal time and effort and everything too. He is not the kind of coach that's going to sit in the room and not let it, fall to the wayside. He's going to devote every ounce of his energy to it. And one of the things I read this kind of anecdotally that Heupel at Tennessee, apparently, he didn't love putting a lot of his starters on special teams in some of the positions. He liked doing more walk-ons, I guess. And that's not number one going forward with the 105. That's not an issue, but also, Rhule's really done a pretty good job of, we put the best players that we can out there on the field for this. I think Eckler's going to have everything available to him, to have success here. And so it's going to be fun to watch. He is somebody that when you see a guy on the sideline running up and down and he's jumping up in the air and everything, it's going to be Mike Eckler. It's fun to have him back. And it's a Nebraska guy. He went to K-State, played at K-State, but he's from Blair. He's a Nebraska-born guy. And so it's good to have him back. I do want to reference the former special teams coordinator, Ed Foley. He is obviously no longer the special teams coordinator, but he is still with the program. And they're retaining him as a high school relations position here. And anybody that's been on Twitter the last 2-3 years and on social media and have watched him travel the state, and he has gone to just about every stinking school in this state. I mean, he's had about every one of the 93 counties, and he's gone to 8-man schools. And if you've seen the response from local high school coaches all across the state, we've had Glenn Snodgrass on several times, the now former York coach. He spoke very highly of his interactions with Foley. He's well liked here locally. And so I think it's a great position for him actually to be in and to continue to be in. That external relations role with high school coaches in state. So I'm glad to see that. It's going to be important that we keep that relationship going, especially in the future here, with the walk-on program essentially going away with the 105, having that relationship and I still want us recruiting well in state and going after kids in state. And it's nice to have Foley, I think, be in that role.
Plus, I guess, can we follow him? Like, he should start like a diners blog or something, like where all the good diners in Nebraska are. Right? Like, maybe I want to come back out to Western Nebraska and play some more golf, and I want to know a good place to eat while I'm in some small town somewhere playing their golf course. That would be awesome.
Oh yeah, I mean that'd be my perfect job, but he starts the job maybe.
I disagree, Hunky. I think you're in your perfect job right now. I think it's perfect for you. So
could be. All right. Well, this is it's been a fun little hour here, guys. Parting shots here. Obviously, it was nice to have Redcast Abby here, but she had to leave a few minutes early. Rob, we'll start with you.
Well, I just want to remind everybody about the Coloradans for Nebraska, March 6th at the Avalanche game. First 100 people to buy tickets get a souvenir Husker Avalanche puck. So that's pretty cool. And, you know, I just think that right now, the fact that we can focus on other sports like softball, volleyball, basketball, it's just, you know, kind of the talk of the town right now, even with football being in the off season and kind of taking a little bit of a backseat, I would say, to Husker fandom right now, because we've got something to root for. You know, even the women's team is doing really well and probably will make the tournament. So, you know, 2 years back to back, both basketball teams making the tournament. It's just an exciting time to be a Husker fan right now. So, you know, let's just keep rooting on all of our sports and, you know, just have a good time doing it.
Awesome. Boomer.
Yeah, I just kind of want to second what, you know, Rob was talking about.
I'm
there as
Rob.
far as-
Yes.
Yeah, Rob was talking about there as far as, you know, it's not just football and not just volleyball, you know, or baseball and basketball. We have all these other sports, you know, here at Nebraska. You know, like, for example, in a couple of weeks, we've got an actual, you know, bowling Big Red Invitational at Hollywood Bowl, the weekend of the 21st through 23rd. And I don't know how many fans know this, but our bowling team is quite solid too. So that's just another opportunity for Nebraska fans to go out, support a championship quality team, and just kind of maybe watch a sport you normally wouldn't. So take advantage of these kind of times. These things aren't expensive. It's just a fun way to spend a few hours and just, you know, support Nebraska just pretty much in all of its aspects. So go ahead and do that. So.
No, that's great. Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing, you know, with football consumes a lot in this state, and it consumes a lot on this podcast. But we've always tried to do some other things. We've tried to do baseball and basketball, and not just be a football-only podcast. And now with Abby joining the Redcast, we're able to do so much more on top of that. But I think it's also important because sometimes you just need a break from football. And I think football needs just, you know, there is no off season in the state, but, you know, even if you can just divert your attention for a couple of weeks, there's so much going on here. Softball starting up now and baseball starting up here in a week, and we'll do a baseball show and get to talking about that. And then, of course, with March Madness, and hopefully even with the loss tonight with the women, hopefully we have two teams in March Madness. And so there's a lot of other things going on. I do just want to highlight this one here, the national championship volleyball team, Penn State. Their coach, Katie Schumacher-Cowley, she finished her chemotherapy for a breast cancer diagnosis. The 44-year-old national championship winning coach rang the bell on Monday. And certainly we are all very glad to hear that. That was an amazing story of what they went through this season. Volleyball was a very interesting season of volleyball with a lot of different storylines, but certainly Penn State, we're very happy that their coach is healthy and was able to ring the bell. So I don't know. Does anyone else have anything?
I got nothing.
You got nothing?
I'm going to Disneyland.
Yeah, you're going. You literally can say you're going to Disneyland. Super Bowl.
Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl. I'm going to Disneyland.
Rob's going to Disneyland. Boomer, you doing anything fun this week?
No, I'll be hanging out at home. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that'll be fine. Yeah.
Been hanging out at home. All right. Well, Redcasters, thank you so much for joining us again. We'll be on here in the next couple of weeks and continue, you know, supporting here with what's going on with March Madness with the Huskers. You know, I think that we've got something pretty special going right now, Fred and the boys, and hopefully we'll get to back-to-back March Madnesses for the first time since the mid-90s. So until next time, it's another Go Big Redcast.
Go Big Red.
GBR.
A Herd at Sports Network production.